Hi, I'm Matt Kelsey. Today we'll talk about the Stronge Effectiveness Performance Evaluation System. It was developed by Dr. James Stronge and Stronge & Associates, his consultancy, and includes 7 teacher performance standards. Stronge EPES draws on multiple data sources in order to evaluate stakeholders. There are observations for teachers, for new teachers, at least 3 formal observations per year, in addition to several informal observations. There's also a documentation log, which consists of artifacts that teachers contribute, as well as student surveys performed at least once per year at the end of the first semester and optionally at the end of the second semester to help measure improvement. Measures of student progress are yet another data source included. And these are typically standardized test results. Finally, there's a self-assessment that teachers may optionally perform at the beginning of the year. The process that Stronge follows is that teachers set goals within the first month based on student learning outcomes. And these are based on student results, such as the measures of student progress. There's a mid-year interim review and an end-of-the-year summative review. Stronge says that, quote, providing effective feedback is the bridge that connects teacher evaluation to improvement. This, in turn, will positively impact student learning outcomes. I chose this model because, first of all, James Stronge holds a PhD from the University of Alabama. He's a heritage professor in educational policy planning and leadership at the College of William and Mary. This is someone who does have his own consultancy, but it's not his sole source of income. And he is a practicing researcher and university professor. So this is someone we can trust as a credible source for what works in evaluation systems. There's also a lot of empirical research supporting elements of the model, although they don't specifically evaluate the effectiveness of the model compared to others, such as Danielson or 5D. But there are many elements of the model supported by research. It's better than drive-by evaluation. It improves professional atmosphere. Feedback and objectivity are improved. Having such a model promotes common dialogue about instruction. It's more comprehensive and specific than traditional drive-by evaluations. It decreases role ambiguity, which means that teachers know what's expected of them and also better perceive the link between their efforts and their performance. Teachers tend to accept the standards as consistent with their own views of teaching, and the system contributes more to reflection and contributes more to teaching aligned with standards. Ultimately, the system has, quote, substantial criterion validity. It's also based on research that Stronge has published through 3 books, published through ASCD. But most importantly, it's been iterated over the years. So this is not something that's been developed in isolation of the teachers and school leaders that it's designed to be used with. Originally, when they implemented it, there were 20 separate performance standards. They distilled that down to 7 based on feedback from schools. The developers of the model co-observed with district administrators, and they also took feedback from working groups composed of teachers and specialists and school leaders on which artifacts to use as evidence. So this is something, once again, that's been developed in cooperation with the people that it's supposed to serve. I said before that there were 7 standards that are broadly similar to other models such as Danielson and 5D. So professional knowledge. This corresponds to 5D's curriculum and pedagogy dimensions, as well as Danielson's first domain. Instructional planning, this is similar to Danielson's first domain once again, as well as the 2 domains of dimensions of purpose and curriculum and pedagogy from the 5Ds. Instructional delivery, this corresponds to 5D's student engagement and Danielson's domain 3, but an important distinction is that the 5Ds use more student-focused language, so it's focused on student engagement, whereas Danielson and Stronge frame it more in terms of what teachers are doing. And that is an important distinction, especially if you were to ask Dufour and Marzano. Assessment of and for student learning. So this corresponds to 5D's assessment for student learning dimension and Danielson's third domain. However, the 5Ds and Stronge emphasize assessment more as separate domains, whereas Danielson includes it alongside several other pedagogy and classroom practice indicators. Learning environment, this corresponds to the 5Ds classroom environment and culture in Danielson's domain 2. For Stronge's professionalism, they say that this is a commitment to collaboration and continuous improvement. Once again, very similar to what 5D plus talk about in the plus part of the rubric. It wasn't part of the original 5 dimensions, and it's part of what Danielson addresses in domain 4. The most important distinction between Stronge and 5D and Danielson are that Stronge includes student progress as an optional 7th dimension. This student progress examines student results, so in other words, standardized test scores, as part of teacher evaluation. Now, it's only 1 out of 7 strands, but 5D and Danielson don't do this. They talk about quote-unquote formative assessment, which is a component of Danielson's domain 3. Well, I think Dufour and Marzano would actually like this, because they talk about, quote, evidence that our students are acquiring the knowledge and skills, and that's what teachers should focus on. By including it as a distinct strand in teacher evaluation, Stronge certainly does focus on this. But I suspect Singer, who really hated Danielson, he would hate it. Hargreaves and Fullen talk about this business capital view of teaching, where it's a very transactional view and like teacher input in, student test scores out. They really don't like that, so I suspect they also wouldn't like this dimension of Stronge's evaluation strands. But the point is, by and large, these aren't very different views of teaching, you know? So they should be familiar for teachers and easy to adapt to. Unique to Stronge is that Stronge really formally asks for multiple data points beyond just test scores and observations. They acknowledge student surveys as an important component, and also a documentation log. So the documentation log is like a portfolio. I really like how it includes a teacher's voice. And it helps balance against this like snapshot problem of observations where you're seeing the teacher on one day at one time. As well, it also balances against this one test at one time problem with standardized test scores, where it's the student taking a test at one point in their career. It allows for a more holistic view of what the teacher is doing as part of their professional practice. I also really like how Stronge has a model, not just for teachers, but also for educational specialists and school leaders. It sends the message that everyone's accountable, and it avoids what Hargreaves and Fullen call the, quote, misplaced focus on individual teacher quality. It sends the message that we do have to, quote, transform the entire profession. It sends the message that everyone in the system, not just teachers, are accountable for improving student performance. The fact that the Stronge requires 3 meetings per teacher per year. Dufour and Marzano and Horing and Loeb all talk about kind of the low return compared to the investment of time when you have administrators going through and doing a lot of observations. So I think they might still say that the paperwork burden of Stronge is fairly high. At the same time, we still need to build evidence to remove problem teachers, but also to support good ones. In the event that an accusation is leveled against a teacher we know is good, Stronge would mean that we have a long body of evidence showing the numerous times the teacher has demonstrated good performance. So I see it as a way to hold people accountable, but also to support them. What are the implications for schools and school leaders? Well, for me, reading Stronge has solidified my idea about what good teaching practice is, because there's so much overlap with Danielson and 5D, and I would use it largely as is. Stick to an externally validated model. Don't just start making things up. But there are a couple of potentials for modifications. First of all, Fink and Markholt talk about the importance of learning walkthroughs to norm expectations. I think that's something that could be built into Stronge. I'd also consider replacing observations with videos. Jim Knight talks about the importance of closing the gap between perception and reality, and video is a great way to do that. I also would like to know where instructional coaches fit into this process, and that's a question I also have for Danielson and 5D, as well as how PLCs fit into this process. If Dufour and Marzano are saying that PLCs, or building structures for teachers to collaborate and evaluate their own practice, is the way to improve teacher performance, do we still need these formal systems? My guess is yes, we do. My gut is yes, we do. And based on based on my experience, yes, we do. How are teachers going to react to Stronge? Well, that's not really the important question. The question is not how they're going to react to Stronge or Danielson or 5D. The question is, have you built a trusting and collaborative environment at your school? Because if you have, no matter what tool you're using, teachers are going to see it as an opportunity for them to get feedback and improve their performance and keep the focus on student learning. If you don't have that trust and culture, it doesn't matter whether you're using Danielson or 5D or Stronge. Teachers are going to see it as just another gotcha moment, just another way to remove bad teachers and punish teachers. And this is really what Hargreaves and Fullen are warning about. They're warning about how all of the silver bullets that reformers have loaded into their guns, how these bullets are destroying the culture of collaborative professional capital that have the potential to improve our schools. So this could be a tool used for good or evil. Communication and trust building are the key, and what we need is literature to show us as school leaders how to develop that.